Hello, and welcome back to another incredible episode of E2E, where we bring you the world's best experts. And now, today's episode is going to be something which is going to blow your mind, and I am personally looking forward to speak with this amazing expert. Now, as many of you know, I'm a high performance coach. I'm a peak performance coach. I bring results. I work with business owners, athletes, and large corporations because I believe that it is exactly the same mindset where you need to have a target. So you have a goal, you need to have a team, and you need to bring in results. So for those of you who are watching us right now and you are listening to us right now, I want to ask you this question. Have you ever been in a situation where you end up giving your all and you have a lot of weight on your shoulders? You've got a team that's depending on you. You've got a family that's relying on you. You've got your shareholders who are there waiting to point a finger on you to see the results. What's the dividends? What's happening? What's going on? And sometimes you get to a point where you are overwhelmed, which means you turn off your emergency lights and sometimes you end up in what now we call a burnout. So I have invited a special guest to this episode because I want to speak to you, you who is a high performer, you who has a high level of responsibility, and sometimes you feel overwhelmed. And most of the times, when you feel overwhelmed, you're not even capable of asking for help, or you're not even capable of taking the right pause, taking a break, and getting out of the picture so you can have a better perspective. So, with no further ado, I'm bringing you today an expert. And this expert is number one, an amazing lady. And she is going to bring in some insights, some tools, and some new perspectives that can help you even perform on a higher level. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a hand and let's welcome on stage the one and only BAL Matharu. Hey, BAL Matharu, our
Hi.
nervous system expert. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, Moses. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm really looking forward to
Oh,
this conversation with you.
me too. I'm so excited about this because one of the major questions I have when I work with high profiles is always, hey, Moses, how can I manage this? Because I feel I'm on a verge of a burnout. And personally,
Absolutely.
my family, I have experienced this. Probably I may share this a little bit later. But before we dive into everything, I want to ask you a question because I am as curious as our listeners and people who are watching us right now. So, nervous system is a buzz. It's a buzzword, and everybody's kind of abusing it. Okay, so
Sure.
what's the hype and what's the definition of nervous system in a simple way by you?
Sure. No, that's great. Thank you very much for having me, first of all, on the podcast. And thank you for asking the question. Nervous system dysregulation has become such a buzzword. And the reason being, people are identifying that the reason they're getting so many symptoms is because their nervous system is stuck in a stress response. And we have so many stresses these days. That's the thing, Moses. We have stresses that are external, email stresses. We think they are danger. So we actually respond like they are dangerous and we get stuck in that stress mode. So if we look at it from a symptomatic point of view, burnout is usually exhaustion, it's overactive mind, it is the ability not to be able to think clearly, and it's not being able to also connect with individuals because you're forever going. You've got that hustle, that kind of hustle mindset. You're just continuing going without pause. Now, when you're in that situation, you get these symptoms where your body's saying, I can't do this anymore. And it literally shuts down. And I want to take this back to what a nervous system is actually in its entirety, what it is as a function. So if we've got these symptoms, the symptoms are in the body. The body, see it as a computer. The computer is actually controlled by two processors, not one. So if we think of the brain as a processor, but two processors. So on one hand, we've got the sympathetic nervous system, which is your fight and flight. On the other processor, we've got the rest and digest restoration system. So our mind, our brain is actually under one processor all day, every day. It's either going to be in that stress mode or it's either going to be in that restorative mode. It's flitting between the two all the time. When it's in that rest and digest phase, all the blood flow is into our digestion. So our digestive system is on. It's online. Our reproductive system is online. Our immune system is online. Our detoxification system is online. However, when we see a bear or tiger, we flit into fight or flight mode. At that point, all the blood flow from the center, it goes into our muscles ready for fight or flight. The only problem is those bears and tigers have actually now been replaced by emails, phone calls, conversations, and we're forever in that fight and flight mode. It's fine to be there for a short while, and our hormones enable us to stay there for a short while and enable those mechanisms to work properly. But when they're in that mode for a long period of time, we burn out because that cortisol is continuously being released. We have pro-inflammatory material continuously being released. Our body becomes inflamed. And for that reason, we're more susceptible to problems occurring. And our immune system, which was on when we were in the parasympathetic recovery mode, isn't switched on anymore. It's dysfunctional. So the more we stay in that stress response, we develop something called a maladaptive stress response, which is that our body is prone to staying in that stress for longer and creating these chemical hormones that break down your body. And for that reason, we end up finding ourselves in that survival mode for so much more longer. And it's our memory, it's potentially old memory, our brain patterns that are keeping us there. So we're sensing danger in our limbic system, which is the emotional system. So because we're actually now memorizing past behaviors or past situations that are keeping us in stress response, we're spending more time over there. And what keeps us there is our subconscious mind, because all the memories of whatever's happened in the past is stored in our subconscious. It's not in our conscious mind. And because they're in the subconscious, we can't access them. We can't get rid of them. They're just there, stored. And when subconscious memories are stored in that way, you just basically, they create fear, they create trauma, and they create these mini traumas keeping us in stress response. So that's basically what that looks like. So in terms of nervous system, Dr. Stephen Porges actually took it a step further, and he created a 3-step ladder about the stress response, where if you look at the ladder, you've got 3 rungs to it. Your top rung is your vagus ventral vagal state, and that's your safety state. That's the parasympathetic system. That's where you feel connected, you can think clearly, your immune system's on, your digestive system's on, and you feel good. The next rung is your fight and flight mode, where you feel that whole kind of the response to that is mobilized, that is activated when we perceive danger. You know, it's activated when we want to defend ourselves and escape. Yep. And then you've got the dorsal vagal state at the bottom. And the dorsal vagal state is a primitive defense strategy that enables you to freeze. It collapses your body completely down and you're in shutdown. Now, ideally, we spend time in the top two rungs and we flit in and out. You can't stay at the top all the time. You need to go into the second one, into fight and flight, and come back up. But when we go into burnout, we go into that bottom one, which is the dorsal
Mhm.
vagal state. And when we're in that dorsal vagal state, like I say, our bodies are in complete shutdown. And it's really difficult then to come up to that sympathetic nervous system, to the parasympathetic nervous system to get back online. So that's what the polyvagal ladder theory constitutes of. And it really helps explain why we get shut down in that kind of burnout state.
And now that you've said this, I can share a personal story. Uh, my wife was running a huge corporation, and
Hmm.
by running the huge corporation, she was the director of it. And suddenly in 2019, her body shut down completely. So, and I can tell you it was lack of sleep, overall working, and overall thinking, and trying to be everywhere, doing everything, and managing everything. And literally, for years, she was sleeping very, very little until her body 2019 shut down. The first thing I did, I wish I knew you earlier. The first thing I did is um, get out of that environment, take a long break. We spent 2 months in the States, and then we got out of the busy buzz of London. Okay, spent the summer somewhere else, and
Hmm.
then suddenly COVID came in, where all the entire world shut down. And I can tell you, no matter what happened, and I'm sorry for what happened, but at the same time, I see that COVID period of time as a blessing, because by force, all the world had to slow down, adjust, and reinvent itself. And we took that time as a break. We took that time as a moment of recharge. And I remember she was sleeping anywhere between 13 to 14 hours. So the nervous system had to go back to what you are talking about, feeling safe, the safety part. So that's
Absolutely.
how she got back into that. And I can tell you, it took years. Now, what's your best advice for somebody who may be saying, hey, Moses and Bal, I don't want to get there, but I see exactly that I'm spending more time in the flight and fight mode, and it's suddenly getting into the freeze
Hmm.
and the phone mode. Okay, where
Hmm.
now you kind of don't care, everything is shut down, you apathy is reigning. Okay, and give me three tips that our
Yeah.
audience who is watching us and listening to us can activate immediately. Three small practical tips that can allow them to prevent getting in that level.
That's a brilliant question, and it's your wife's experience was actually the experience of so many as well at that point, for people to slow down and really recognize. And it speaks to actually recognizing that you're in that state. That's the first thing, becoming aware, because people continue going, and then they think there's something wrong with them because they end up at the doctor does blood tests. There's nothing wrong on a on
Nothing
the
wrong. I
yeah,
mean,
there's nothing wrong in the blood.
we spent so much time doing tests and going everywhere, and everybody was saying you're perfectly well.
Yeah,
There's
normal.
nothing wrong with your body. But
Yeah,
then she was not
absolutely.
feeling at all alive. It was kind of life threatening, but the doctors didn't know what it was. And my wife was at that time, she was completely alkaline. So she was vegetarian vegan. So her
Hmm.
body was clean as a baby.
Yeah,
And
and
no matter that, things were not going well.
and you're talking to something so um, something that everyone needs to know, and that is something called so. If I can just rewind back, that you think you're going through something, and then doctors don't find anything wrong, but then you start thinking, am I believing that? Am I just thinking this? Am I just making this up? Is it me? But that's not true, because on a cellular level there's something called the cell danger response. And this was a term coined by Dr. Robert Navio of California University. And he came up with this cell danger response where on a cellular level, we're made up of so many cells. On a cellular level, we're getting stuck in survival. So in our cells, we've got something called mitochondria. Have you heard of those?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Mitochondria are our cells' battery, and they're the battery power that powers them to actually produce energy. So ATP is produced. However, they've got a secondary function, and that is for the survival of the cell as well. So when we actually have a stress response in the body, they go into survival mode, and they also let all the other cells in the area know. It's like a warning signal of the community cells that actually everyone's going to shut down. Those cells then won't take in any nutrients and they won't produce any energy. So that's the reason for that lack of energy. That's the reason why people feel burnt out. They have a lack of energy because on a cellular level, they're stuck in that stress response. Now, the way to actually bring them out of that stress response is actually to help their bodies feel safe. And it's what you've just mentioned. You know, you took your wife away, you helped her feel safe. And within that environment, away from the hustle of London, you were able to actually bring her system down. And it's all about the limbic system starting to feel safe, starting to feel actually there is no immediate danger. And it's rewiring some of those neural pathways to say, what was triggering you shouldn't be triggering you, but it requires a lot of awareness where you're at, and then safety, to bring safety within the body to say, actually, you're okay. You're not in any fear right now. You shouldn't be in any fear right now because you're not in any danger right now. And slowly those cells, like I just mentioned, the mitochondria, they start regulating back into a functional mode as opposed to a protective mechanism around the cell that starts disintegrating. So even on a cellular level, we are actually in that survival mode. And with that, like I mentioned, you get limbic system dysregulation, you know, your brain's alarm center is going off where your emotions are held. And the best way to manage all of that is awareness and safety, and then start doing the work to bring your breath back to your body to enable you to actually feel safe in the current moment. Because like I mentioned, all our memories, everything, we all either operate at any time where our brain's going in the past, from memories of the past, or fears of the future. And we're not in either. We can't control either, yet we seem to be there. And our limbic system's going to go off from a thought. So just from that thought process of some argument that happened years ago, you're going to go into survival response. You know, you're going to go into that stress. So the best thing to do is actually get present in the current moment, really ground yourself, because in this current moment, you're safe.
Now, you mentioned breath work. Can you
Mm.
tell us more about that and how that is important?
Yeah, sure. So with our autonomic nervous system, the only we have this kind of non-voluntary action that's going on, which is our blood pressure is automatically regulated, our heart rate is automatically regulated, our all our functions internally, they're automatically regulated. Breath is also, you can leave it and it's automatically regulated. However, you can also manipulate it to manipulate the rest of the systems. So if you breathe slower, you actually slow down your breath, you slow down your respiratory rate, you slow down your heart rate, you slow down your blood pressure. And there's other nuances here as well, which I'll talk to. But if when you do that and you have an extended expiration, so you extend the breath out, you actually then tap into your parasympathetic nervous system. And breath work is used a lot. I mean, it's used extensively now. It's become the buzzword right now, but it's a very age-old tradition. You know, it's an age-old Indian tradition, a Chinese practice tradition. Pranayama is one of the old practices. Now we've got pranayama yoga, but pranayama breath work goes centuries old because it actually helps you control that breath in order to control your nervous system state. And I use breath work to actually bring the person back from this dysregulated state where your limbic system is in dysfunction and dysregulated, where your body is stuck in that stress response and overactive stress, hypervigilant stress response. So you can actually start coming back into safety just by using your breath, grounding, current moment. And that is your somatic practices, your body brain practices. And it gives you that sense of calm. It gives you that sense of, I'm here, I'm okay, there's no harm here, there's no danger here, and I can come back to regulation. That's the thing that rewires some of those neural pathways.
Okay. Okay. And sometimes this burnout could lead to a traumatic experience. And there is a trauma, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because when your body shuts down, it is a trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is there a danger that this trauma can become a disease or can be a pathologic challenge? So now, from a traumatic experience, now it becomes something which needs more attention. Okay. Now, in this process of this, how is it that the trauma can be linked to the disease, to the pathology, and how can we avoid it?
I love that question because trauma is indicative. If you look at, for example, the ACEs study, I don't know if you've come across the ACEs study, the Adverse Childhood Events study. It was done a fair few years ago that shows that if you experience certain traumas in childhood, you're more prone to certain diseases further down the line. So certain childhood traumas where you felt a lack of safety and a lack of love, that you've not felt, like I say, loved or worthy enough, you store them in your body as trauma. They may not have been trauma induced at the time. You know, it could be a parent saying to you not to do something, but you've caught that as a, I'm not allowed to do this, and it's traumatic for you. So it could be something quite not even what you'd think trauma in your adult years, but as a child, something that you've picked up as traumatic. That gets caught up as an emotion in your body. Emotion is stored in your fascia, and fascial tissue surrounds us. We're all made up of complete fascia around us. Fascial tissue has a lot of nerve endings. It stores trauma in our outer body as stuck energy. And when that energy is stuck in fascial tissues, you won't move that part of the body as freely as maybe
Mm,
some other, like your normal fascial tissues. So, one of the main things is when that emotion gets stuck in the body, it can, like I say, cause you to have problems with movement in that area, but also it keeps you, again, in high stress response just because you've got that emotional trauma and you keep revisiting it subconsciously or unconsciously. So your trauma levels, your stress levels are a little bit higher because of that old trauma. Now, they've mapped a lot of diseases and conditions to certain areas of the body. This is old Indian practice, old Chinese practice going back centuries, but it's come to light now in scientific evidence to show that there's certain conditions or certain diseases that you can map out with certain emotions. For example, how anger gets caught up in the liver and you end up getting more liver issues. Breast cancer is associated or shown to be associated with loss, you know, the loss of touch, maybe a maternal figure or a paternal figure. They've mapped out if your dominant side is more paternal, your non-dominant side is more maternal, which is like, you know, and also people a little bit further down your subordinate levels, whereas on your paternal side is more your hierarchy. So they've mapped certain regions out, and, you know, working previously with musculoskeletal patients in my early part of the career, a lot of the musculoskeletal problems like back pain, you know, it's like devaluation of yourself or you feel the weight.
mhm,
And if those emotions are then addressed by work, I mean, there's someone called Dr. David Hawkins who actually said that there's certain traumas that you store in the body, they're emotionally linked. And if you put your attention on those emotions then take around 90 seconds. Give your attention to the emotion, and really let it be. Don't try and manipulate it. And that emotion will drive out of your body, and you'll probably find it a lot easier. And I've got an example of this, which is really interesting. Yesterday, my son came home with a bit of a crick in his neck. And usually, from a physiotherapy point of view, I'd say to him that, okay, let me have a look at doing some soft tissue mobilizations. However, we sat there and I said to him, what do you feel in the tissues? What is it that you feel? Just bring your emotion, bring your attention to that area in your body, really put your attention on it and just see what it is that you feel. And I said, breathe into it, just breathe into it. And we did this for about 2 minutes. And by the end of it, he said, Mum, it feels freer. Simple. Because our body's crying out for our attention. At the point that we actually have any condition, our body's saying, wake up. You're not looking after me the way I need to be looked after. You're not giving me the attention. So give me back some attention and deal with whatever it is that I'm dealing with right now. Deal with the emotion, deal with the movement, deal with the breath, and let's move on forwards in a kind of easier, disease-free way.
Now, you mentioned a little bit about your background. So I want to ask you, Bal, why you? And why are you doing what you're doing right now? What's the
So
story behind that?
yeah, sure. So I am a physiotherapist that qualified back in early 2000, and I did my rotations in hospitals around Birmingham, loved physiotherapy. And during COVID, I ended up specializing in respiratory physiotherapy. During COVID, I felt I needed to give my all in every area. So I had 3 jobs at the time for NHS professionals. I was working in intensive care. I was working in a community discharge, hospital discharge team, and also elective surgery as well. And throughout the 3 roles, I was working over 70-hour weeks. And lo and behold, 2 years later, I did burn out, unfortunately, and so I've experienced burnout myself and I knew what it was like. That, along with the fact that in my head, I could not understand why patients who came into intensive care, some of them were on double ventilator support with no past medical history. So, what was making them come in to have double ventilator support when there were other people in the community with multiple comorbidities and not on ventilator support? What was the difference? Why were there some that were? What was going on there? So that kind of led me down the road of, including my own symptoms, to identify what was going on with my body and why their body was in such a state when they had no previous medical history. So I went down the road of lifestyle medicine. I wanted to understand what lifestyle medicine was, and then came across energy medicine and root cause medicine to get to the bottom of why we actually have the symptoms we do. Being a very curious physiotherapist, I wanted to delve deep, and hence the reason why I delved into the cellular level of what was going on with our bodies. And that's why I've come across, like I say, Dr. Robert Navio's work on cell danger theory, the polyvagal theory. There's the whole limbic system dysregulation. All these theories actually constitute our stress response, which gets us stuck in our bodies. And by addressing my own body at that time and doing some of this breath work, because I then took up a PhD in how breath work can reverse chronic disease. I'm currently undergoing those clinical trials at the moment and working with chronic pain, chronic fatigue syndrome, and fibromyalgia to see if we can reverse some of these symptoms. And doing that work and doing breath work myself, there's 2 things that happen in my body. One, I recovered. I became more authentic in terms of nature. And secondly, I reversed a 20-year-old history with my thyroid. So I used to have hypothyroid since my first pregnancy. But I managed to reverse that just by doing some of the breathwork exercises. And I was at the time on the highest level of levothyroxine. But like I say, I came completely off it. My bloods are normal. And I'm also navigating at the age of 50 now, navigating perimenopause, but I'm navigating it with grace. I don't get any other symptoms, and I'm actually going through it quite well.
Wonderful, wonderful. And obviously, before we leave, I want to ask a question. Normally, all my guests that come on the podcast, I always ask them to further support. So, where can people who are watching us or listening us right now, where can they find you, and what is the gift that you've got for them? You are
Ah,
talking about
perfect.
something which is really cool, and I am going to get it right now.
Amazing. So I've spoke about nervous system dysregulation, how it's a common thing these days with so much stress around us. The free tool that I'm offering is a nervous system dysregulation checklist. So you can actually answer these 20 questions and just go in, answer the 20 questions, and it'll give you a table of whether your body is currently in nervous system dysregulation. Because as I mentioned, awareness is the first step. If you're aware that there's something going on a cellular level that you need help with, then that takes out the confusion that there's something going on, or is there something going on, and that kind of whole mental trauma of feeling like there's something wrong, but the GP is saying that there's nothing wrong with your bloods. So it takes out all the guesswork, and you get to understand that actually on that cellular level there is something going on. So the first thing is that nervous system dysregulation checklist to assess whether you are in this state at the moment. The second thing is I do breath work with many corporate and leadership teams, and I've got 6 breath work exercises that you can do. They're 1 minute each. They're on this cheat sheet. And they'll take you from one state to another. So, for example, if you need to prepare before a meeting, or you need to prepare before a presentation, you can do a 1 minute exercise to get you in the appropriate state so that you've got blood flow to the right area of your brain to be able to do some of this, to go in there with a lot more confidence, and also not forgetting your things, not and making sure that you're not nervous or stressed. And then I've got breath work to just basically do a 1 minute exercise to bring you from an elevated state all the way down to a calm state, to become more focused, to become more creative, to become more big problem thinker, or big solution thinker, should I say. So there's a breathwork worksheet that's available on the app, and there's a nervous system dysregulation checklist that's available on the app.
So they can find everything on this link. For those of you who are watching us or you are listening to us, go down on the descriptions and you will find the link where you can have this checklist and the gift of the app. You can download it from whatever device you've got, Apple or Android, Google, and you can download it and you can take advantage of the tools that BAL is offering us. Now, Bal, thank you so much. Before we leave, there's one question I ask all my guests. And this question is this: Bal, imagine you are now right here, okay? Present today. But then I want you to look on your left side and I want you to look at your Bal of 8 years old. And then I want you to look on your right side and you have Bal of 80 years old. And the BAL of today has to give one message to the BAL of 8 years old and the BAL of 80 years old. So go, let's start with the small little girl.
So the
What would you tell her
8-year-old,
now? Yes,
perfect. So the 8-year-old, I would say to her that you are enough. Just as you are enough. You're loved, you're safe, you are enough. Having gone through so many ACEs myself, I know what it's like to be in a traumatized state. So that's the message I'd give to my 8-year-old. To the 80-year-old, I would again say, you are enough, because you've come from a place of amazing crazy strain and also adverse events, and look where you've got to. Always remember, you are enough, just
that's
as you are.
powerful. That's powerful. Thank you so much for sharing this. Thank you so much for supporting the audience. And for those of you who have just joined in now, or you are watching us now, or listening us now, this is E2E, Expert to Experts, where we bring you the world's best experts. And today we have had the nervous system expert, somebody who has gone through it, came out of it, and now she is on a mission to make sure that you have the right support to get out of it and be more than enough, as exactly she said to the small
Perfect.
girl and the 80-year-old girl. Bal, thank you so much. I believe
Thank you.
we will catch up with another specific episode. And by the way, if you're watching us or you're listening to us and you have anything to comment, ask. And if you have anything you want us to bring back to bring back Bal, to share even something more advanced or something specific, I believe she'll be more than happy to join us back and add
Absolutely.
again more value to each one of you. From the deepest of my heart, thank you so much for joining us, Bal. Thank you so much for all of you who have been watching and listening to us, and see you at the next episode with the next expert. This is E2E, and this is Moses. Thank you so much, and that's
Thank you,
Bal.
Moses. Thank you, Moses. Thank you for the opportunity to join you today as well. It's been great.
Very welcome. And for now, I am out. Ciao.